All right, this is my third time recording the video. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to upload it to YouTube this time, make it public for the class. So this is my video on coca and cocaine and its relation to the indigenous people of South America. So coca and cocaine are two extremely different substances. Coca is a plant that has a leaf which, when chewed or brewed in mixture with an alkaline substance, it acts as a mild stimulant and is used for medicinal and ritualistic purposes largely in South America. The use of this plant as a stimulant can be dated back to over 8,000 years ago, to the pre-Inca era, and the benefits that the indigenous people of South America sought with the plant were the ability to suppress hunger, thirst, pain, and fatigue. However, the leaf contains an alkaloid, which has been used as the base for the infamous drug cocaine. But they are in no way the same thing. Cocaine is a compounded chemical that is the alkaloid in coca mixed with other harmful chemicals that exacerbate the stimulant nature of coca. And these chemicals range from lime, salt, water, to gasoline, sulfuric acid, ammonia, hydraulic acid, and more, that all go into creating the Schedule II narcotic. Coca has been observed to have no negative side effects for the user and is largely considered a form of alternative medicine, whereas the use of cocaine can be extremely problematic, as excessive use of the drug releases a chemical in your brain that is seen as reward. And this reward system that's being encouraged every time you use cocaine, as soon as you take it away, the withdrawal systems are extreme, which just goes to say that the drug is highly addictive. The UN Single Convention of Narcotic Drugs, or the 1961 Convention on Narcotic Drugs, was held to establish an international narcotics control board that sought to limit the possession, consumption, trade, distribution, import, export, manufacture, and production of drugs to medicinal and scientific purposes only. Sorry, this is also the second question that I'm responding to currently. I found a great article from tni.org that breaks down the criminalization process of the coca leaf itself. According to this article, findings from the WHO and the ECO SOC around the 1950s prompted the UN to recognize the habitual chewing of the coca leaf as sharing parallels to other addictive substances, which ultimately made the UN look at coca as a substance that needed to be suppressed in South America. As a result of the findings, the 1961 Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs, signed at the UN conference, targeted the coca leaf to the same extent as opium and cannabis. The convention sought to eliminate traditional use of the leaf within a 25-year period, deeming it a substance liable for abuse. The 1961 convention signed by the UN paved the way for another convention in 1988 called the Convention Against Illicit Traffic in Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances, which forced states to criminalize coca. And I think what's so absurd about this is that an outside force in the form of the UN was able to go into South America and pretty much say, hey, you have 25 years to totally stop using coca as a traditional medicine or stimulant, when they've been doing it for thousands of years ritualistically and with seemingly no problem. You know, they're here 8,000 years later, but, you know, an outside source can come in and say, hey, stop. Yeah. And then moving on to the third question, between 2013 and 2016, the production of coca in South America spiked 134% to record highs. Simultaneously, cocaine production also increased from 253,000 from over 253,000 kilos of cocaine in 2015 to over 378,000 kilos of cocaine in 2016. So an over 100,000 kilos spike, which is about 33% in just 1 year. The UN released an article with a focus on illicit crop cultivation in South America, which argues the production of illicit crops are beneficial to farmers, but only in the short term. And according to the UN, this is because farmers will have a stable income when they're producing illicit substances, whereas the agricultural market is shifting all the time and is fairly unstable, whereas illicit substances generally only go up in price or in demand. As more people are, born into the world, there's more people that are seeking out drugs. However, the UN argues that reliance of farmers on illicit substances is not a viable long-term solution, as farmers who grow illicit substances generally are looked at as employees of drug traffickers who are liable to change wages or even threaten farmers' livelihood or lives if production quotas are not met. Furthermore, farmers are always at risk of their entire yields being destroyed by the government, which is obviously a bad thing, meaning that the farmer would have no source of income until another agricultural angle is pursued or they can regrow a crop quickly, which is not a viable thing. However, South America's government provides a source of compensation to farmers or indigenous people who relied on the plant economically to support themselves and their families. But according to many of the farmers in South America, this financial compensation is not enough support compared to selling illicit substances. Moving on to the fourth and final question, which deals with cocaine eradication and why it just isn't working so well. And that's because cocaine eradication is an uphill battle for governments of South America. Some farmers abandon their fields when soldiers come to pull their plants in fear of being arrested, but more and more we're seeing farmers protesting their government and are directly resisting soldiers as they come to pull their fields, which passionate farmers resisting military orders is a dangerous thing for obvious reasons. People can die when this happens, on one hand, it's hard not to see how both sides are trying to do the right thing. The government is trying to prevent widespread addiction of a substance, and farmers are trying to support themselves by doing something that was fine to do for thousands of years. And it seems like what legislation is currently in place needs to be changed to prevent bloodshed, to not benefit these criminal organizations, and allow traditional uses to continue that have been happening for thousands of years, way before any of these governments even existed. And I think a lot of people look at what legislation needs to be changed as a fine line, and you have to be really careful about what you do. But I think in all honesty, it just needs to be outright legalization of coca and cocaine, because in all honesty, regardless of what legislations are in place, cocaine is going to be produced. And I think we've seen that in the recent spikes from 2013 to 2016 in the production of cocaine, that those spikes happened regardless of the strict regulations that were currently in place and the governmental seizures of crops. It still happened, and there was a spike. It was a bigger problem than it ever had been during those times. So obviously legislation did not slow the production down. And I think can get a gauge of what legalization would look like if we just even look at the US and legalization of marijuana. Previously, we had, marijuana as a Schedule 1 narcotic across the U.S., which it still is a Schedule 1 narcotic federally, but certain states have legalized it. And in those states, the people that were, using marijuana are still using marijuana. That's not going to change, legal or not legal, but those people are having access to safer products that have no risk of having been substituted for synthetic drugs or other drugs being mixed in with them. And criminal organizations that dealt with marijuana are taking a hit because people can legally go and just buy it at a store. It's a regulated and safer route that takes away from criminal organizations that are benefiting from pushing illegal substances. And I think largely the same thing would happen if coca and cocaine were legalized. The drug would be regulated, and there would be no possibility for mixing of different drugs. You would know exactly what it is that you're ingesting into your body, that you're going to ingest regardless. And criminal organizations wouldn't be able to financially benefit from cocaine anymore because they would be doing it illegally, whereas, the states would be benefiting from it, which they could even tax it and make a large amount of money on. And honestly, I think most importantly is that the coca leaf that has been used as a medicinal product for over 8,000 years will be free to be used as that medicinal substance again without regulation. And I think that's what should happen. Thanks, guys.